Thank you for coming to watch my amazing sword casting. What we'll do is have a quick little talk about swords and where they come from. 5,000, I've forgotten when it is now, it's 4,300 years ago. There's a guy, he's a very powerful and important man. He was buried a mile south of Stonehenge in a place called Amesbury. And in his grave, for the first time ever in this country, he had 3 copper knives and 2 items of gold. No one had ever had this in their grave before, so he was very special. Before that, people had never seen metal, so they might have heard about them, but never seen it. And it takes 700 years for the idea of metalworking to come from Italy to here. So if you lived in Italy, you could go like this and walk here in a lifetime at that speed, and it still takes 700 years for the idea of metalworking to arrive there, because metalworking gives you power, it gives you a way of waging war that is much better than before. So in his grave he's got 3 copper knives, and this is the largest one, which to us is pitiful. But right from the beginning, metal takes on this symbolising of power, importance and position in society. And it's also taken on, in a way, with these double-sided blades, that it's not really a kitchen knife, it's not a pocket knife. If you want a practical knife, you'd have it sharp one side, blunt the other, so you can use it. So it's taken on this darker symbol of death as well. So anyway, so if you're the richest, most powerfulest man in this country, when you die, you get buried with metal, and no one else will have it, very few people. There's probably only about 20 or 30 copper daggers in the British Isles over a 200-year span. They're that rare and that special. The thing about copper is it doesn't lend itself as a material to making longer and longer blades, so it's kind of limited by the technology of being able to be turned into a blade. So copper blades rarely got beyond sort of 7 or 8, 9 inches long, so it's very slow change. But when tin arrives, and they mix the tin and copper together, I'll pass this round so you can have a look, if you have a look already. Once you mix the two together, you get a material that casts better, much harder material, and I can show you that. If we ring this, so it's a much harder material, and it's much stronger as well, so it will hold its form much better than copper will, so it's more rigid. So 300 years down the road we get to about somewhere around the 2000 BC crossover. Everyone's building fantastic big stone circles, lots of imports coming into Britain. It's like a magical time. You've got amber and jet and bone, all being used in jewellery with gold, and it was kind of a boom time in this country, and probably across Europe as well. So when the big man now goes to the next world, he's sporting the latest piece of metalwork. The most prestigious thing you can have is a bronze dagger. So in all the barrows you see around Stonehenge, only a few of them actually had bronze and copper items in. It's really strange. It's still a rare commodity, and it's still incredibly valuable stuff. It's not everybody. It's still only a few. So over 100 chieftains, maybe about 8 will be buried with bronze. It's still a status symbol and something incredibly valuable. Anyway, for the bronzesmith like me, this is fantastic. Big man likes shiny bronze things, and I can make them, so it gives me a perfect job. So the chief goes, well, this is great, it shows how powerful and important I am, but if it was a bit longer, it looks so much better, and it would look so much more important. So the pressure's on poor old bronzesmith to make longer and longer blades, and it gradually happens over 200-300 years. The technology stretches this blade design out and out now. And archaeologists go, oh, it's really boring, the Bronze Age. Not a lot happens, blades get a bit bigger, it's very slow. But if you compare that to the Stone Age, which has taken hundreds of thousands of years to develop, the Bronze Age is comparatively quick in hundreds of years. So anyway, 300 years down the line, the bronzesmith has drawn out his castings now, they're getting longer and longer, and they're heading towards this idea of the sword. We've never seen a sword. Are we all right for temperature?
1202.
Fantastic. So we've all seen a sword, but they hadn't. So the material had to develop, and the technology to make it had to develop, and a whole load of different processes come in. So if you look at something like this, it would have a wooden handle attached. When you watch Troy, Brad Pitt and I've forgotten his name, outside the gates of Troy, great big swords, no chance. This is it. This is Hector and Achilles' sword. It would have been small like this, not a great big Hollywood sword. So, but for their time, that was a big sword, and they would have written about they had huge swords. So in this country, we've started to get a lot of imports of stuff coming into Britain from Europe, and it's always slightly ahead. And a new design, a blade comes out, where they widened it and made it flatter and produced these. The wooden handle's still attached, and the reason is to cast the handle on the end is another technology step that no one's developed, but the idea finally comes in from Europe, and the bronzesmiths here take it that one step further, and we kind of overtake Europe and designing swords. So the sword we're about to cast is a very special sword, because it's basically this sword with a handle. So it's quite an important step. And once this sword gets onto the market, it becomes the standard model for sword copying. Between this sword and its later version, 300 years later, there's probably today more than 2,500 of them spread across museums in private hands. It's so prolific, and because they last, they get preserved in the ground. When you go out, there's two little bronze spears in a glass case. If you think they're 3,000 years old, you look for the nearest piece of iron, and it's absolutely shot. So bronze has that ability to last. So the sword here is quite special that it's... That's all right. So it kind of makes that link, and it's the sword that grows and becomes slightly longer. In Scotland, the swords are noticeably larger. And it's either they've got the technology, or they're just really mean, angry people that want big swords. So it's quite interesting. So in a second, for those who didn't see it this morning, inside the fire there's a thing like a coffee cup called a crucible, and inside the crucible is a charge of bronze. And I'm going to lift it out, take the lid off, and pour the contents into here up to the top. And if all goes well, and the gods have been appeased by my burning of incense, we should get a nice sword cast. So, are we there? Is it 1:30ish?
Yes, 1:30.
It is. Right. Right, can we get all the kids to stand up without kicking the camera tripods? That's good.
Grown-ups too.
No, you're all right.
I can't get up.
Believe it or not, it's actually quite difficult to do this in such open conditions. It's in bright sunlight, and you can't really see the colour of the fire, can you? What's the temperature?
1201.
That's 1200 degrees centigrade, so that's massively hot in there. But you can't see it. So you'd think that all metalworking was done at night, because the temperature of the fire issues the colour of the light. So if you were in the dark, it would be white, it would be very, very bright. But because we're in bright sunlight, you can hardly see it at all. Right, so what I'm going to do now is lift the crucible out, take the lid off, and then pour it into here, and then I'll walk around and show you what's left in the crucible if there is any. There's always things that go wrong doing this, and and usually the worst one is not having enough metal. But I'm confident. Okay, you can stop now. What I'm trying to do is not knock the lid off until the last moment. Can you see that? Right, that's good news. Can we see? See, that's very, 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 very hot. You see that? You don't often see liquid fire.
So how did they know it was hot enough then?
Well, it's a lot of experience you accumulate by doing this. Can you see that? So even though the metal in the crucible is still liquid, the sword's not liquid anymore. So, did you see that, young man? Oh, has everybody had a look?
Right, look, mister. Oh, that's lovely.
What's a
It's
cup
like a
made of?
volcano, isn't it?
Neil, what's a cup made of holding the metal?
Oh, it'd be a clay and something else. Ooh. Right. There you go, look what I've made. Right. So a magical process is happening at the moment, and it's called me looking for a screwdriver. What's happening is, there it is, brilliant. What happens is, with swords and bronze, it's strange. If you think of an ironsmith making an iron sword, he has to join all his bits of iron together, forge them out into rods, forge the rods together to make the shape of the sword, forge it all out. So he's looking at least 2 days worth of work to make a blade. In the Bronze Age, you can see now, I've cast that, I'm just giving it a couple of seconds to cool down a bit more. I could open it now, but we'll let it cool a bit. When he turned out and said, I've got this new material, you can make a sword, you beat it and it takes 2 days, and they're all looking at him going, you're kidding, 2 days to make a sword, that's like mad. But something strange happens at the end of the Bronze Age. You end up with the materials that make bronze, copper, which is readily available in lots of places, but the other one is tin. Without tin, you can't make bronze, and tin is so rare, even in the Bronze Age. The only big deposits are Cornwall, west end of Cornwall, the very tip, Dartmoor, you've got some on the Scilly Isles, you've got some in Brittany, and then you've possibly got some in France, south of France, but they don't think it was known about in the past. After that you've got Afghanistan, Turkey, so tin is an incredibly rare material and very limited supply of it. So with iron you get lots and lots of iron everywhere, so no one can control the supply that much, it levels out as a market. But with bronze you have this problem that some people will have immense control over a very pivotal material. Anyway, I'm just delaying it a bit to build up the drama. If we were casting Bronze Age swords, we would have made clay mould in 2 pieces with an impression of the sword on each side. We'd join them together and then put a clay wrap around the outside. We've had to fire it really carefully to burn out any carbon or organic material in there. Then we would have had to brought it down to a temperature of about 400 degrees and then cast into it. Its moulds are so fragile that hardly any survive. They're incredibly fragile. So once they're cast, in Devon there's a place called Dainton. It's got one of the few collections of Bronze Age moulds that were found, and it's only fragments. once they're thrown out on the surface and they get frosted, they just fall apart and become sand. There's so little solid matter in them. So it paints an interesting picture. So even though today there's probably more than 2,500 of this sword type in the British Isles, there's probably only about moulds for about 6 or 7 swords in the whole of the British Isles, which is very strange. So you get these very distorted pictures. So if that many swords survive today, how many were in circulation? There must be a staggering number of swords and spears and everything to do with war. And it kind of paints a picture of society that's completely male-dominated and completely obsessed with warfare. Shall I pass it round? It probably would have been doable after a few minutes. We could have taken it out the mould, but by leaving it in a bit longer, just give it a chance to cool down. There's less chance of me burning the hole in the bucket. I think that was liquid metal a couple of minutes ago. You can hear it's incredibly hard. What's happened over the years, this is the pouring cup, and this is just what's called flash, so it's overcast slightly. It's actually a good thing, flash, especially on the blade edge, that it takes the metal past where the edge of the blade will be. So it's a beneficial thing if you have a messier casting with more flash, but because I'm demonstrating to you, I've done one without. So it gives you an idea. If you look at the shape and the design, it's so stylish. So this would date from about 800, 900 BC, and it would have been the thing on the block. This is the Ferrari or the latest jet fighter or whatever you want. This would have been amazing. There's one just been excavated in Cambridge in a secret location, and it's got a lead tin alloy pommel. And they're really excited. It's the first time a sword has been found with a pommel, and they'll announce it later. I'm happy to pass it out into the audience. Mummies and daddies must supervise, and you can have a look. And you handle it like, you always hold a sword like this, and I don't want to see anybody doing this. That is a no-no. And the other thing is, you never run your fingers down any swords ever. It's the worst manners you can ever do. So if it's supervised, they can have a look.
Good sword.
It's a good sword. There we go. So it's funny how swords become the ultimate style symbol. So they're interesting. They're a piece of technology, and they become an art form as well. So they cross over so many different boundaries. There's no other piece of metalwork covers so many different aspects compared to swords, because they're the ultimate status symbol, an art image, and a technological piece of metalworking designed for a purpose. It wasn't that much, was it? No, it wasn't. Now the problem is, bronze is quite heavy, so you don't want heavy swords, so you have to design a sword that's not heavy. So this is what they tended to do.
What size are they?
Well, you just make them nice and small.
Spinner.
Yes, is it pure copper material or?
Say again? It's copper and tin. Yeah, mixed together. So it's all 12%. So it's pretty standard kind of mix throughout the ancient world. I mean, today bronzes are so different because when you look to make something, you look at a book and you look for a specific alloy to do what you want to do. But nobody makes swords, and that's why it's all got a bit of a dark art in a way that nobody understands it, because they're using modern bronzes which are the same.
So do you press it in to get this?
Go the camera. Brilliant.
Another Europe art, maybe slightly different, so we don't get to mixed up. I think we'll process the shop we've got first, through to completion before we do that.
Isn't that heavy?
Probably in the autumn.
This piece down here is not this size.
Could you make a ring out of it?
Yes, I'll make your young chap a ring.
Don't drop it.
Yeah, give me a couple of seconds, I'll just
Tilt
change
it up.
gear.
Okay.
Get the hang of it.
So would you, is that hilt complete, or would you put a wooden over the top of that?
Don't drop it. Up a bit, up a bit, up a bit. Hold it up a bit.
That's it.
That's it. Hold it up a bit. Make sure you don't drop
The
it.
problem is half
Right, okay, that's great. Thank you.
come up in